update, but just wanted to make sure that everybody could be here. We did have a couple small changes to the agenda. The Broadband Summit, we are not quite ready with that registration landing page yet, but as soon as we have that, we will send that out to you guys so you can go ahead and see what we have on the agenda and get registered. But with that, I will go ahead and turn things over to Jacob for an update on BEAD workforce.
Thanks. So essentially, I guess to give you guys some background, about 2 weeks ago, we got some guidance from NTIA that we had been waiting for some time. All states received, this policy guidance about BEAD in general, and we have been working on implementing that guidance both in terms of deployment and non-deployment. So one of the elements of that guidance that we got from NTIA was regarding non-deployment funds, and specifically that all previously approved plans for non-deployment have been temporarily frozen as they are reviewing all non-deployment activities.
Yep.
So we are waiting for more information from them on that. We've sent them a letter expressing our commitment to our workforce plans and sort of emphasizing how big of a deal that was to us, and trying to sort of move them in the right direction, and hopefully we can see some positive movement there. But unfortunately, we are going to have to pause all of our non-deployment and workforce activities at this time, like I said, until we get some further information from the federal government. The policy proposal doesn't really give much, or policy guidance doesn't really give much specifics about the timeline where they'll be acting on that or giving us more guidance. So we are waiting and hoping for the best. Like I said, we've emphasized to them how big of a deal it was to us. So hopefully they will come around on that. But that's everything we really know about it thus far. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, Elizabeth, you can go into deployment.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jacob. So for deployment, obviously we've had a bit of a timeline change because of the new NTIA guidance. We are currently anticipating that the application for deployment is going to open July 10th, and it's going to be open for 30 calendar days. Once that application closes, we'll have a negotiation period for any of those unclaimed locations to make sure that they get served. We're currently working on at least 2 webinars, I believe, that we'll have before and then right after the application opens. One just informational, and that second one we should be walking you guys through the deployment application so that we can make sure any questions, issues at that time are addressed, just because we are on a shorter timeline with that updated guidance. And then we're also working on updating the project areas. And once we have those updated, we'll send it out to everybody. It's going to be pretty close to when that deployment application opens, though. But yeah, does anyone have any questions right now about either of those updates, about workforce or deployment? And of course, we have our office hours if any questions happen in the meantime after the meeting on Tuesday at 10:30 to 11:30, and then Thursday 2 to 3. Anyone can stop in and ask questions about BEAD. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Elizabeth, good morning. I was just asking if I read the June 6th guidance from NTIA correctly. Applicants can apply for pre-registration, pre-qualification. How does that affect Florida's timeline? Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, so in regards to pre-registration, anyone's able to register. We have to leave it open for anybody that's wanting to apply. So say that application cycle is already open, that July 10th date, after that people are still able to go ahead and register and then apply. Jacob, did you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we had always intended to keep basically our registration and qualification open on a rolling basis, so anyone would be able to apply at any time. So this won't change that for us. So any provider will be able to register in the grant portal during the open application window, and that was the way we were going to handle it before. So that should not be too much of a change for us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And Jacob did drop the link to the NTI guidance that we received in the chat in case anyone wanted to go reference that. But does anyone have any other questions regarding BEAD? Yeah, Kyle, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm just thinking about if those non-deployment funds are going to stay frozen, when might there be some thought about increasing the investment into any anchor institutions, thinking through deployment, or are they already on just really the deployment side?
So essentially, the policy guidance from NTIA has instructed us not to change our initial proposal volume 2 other than to implement the new elements from the policy guidance. So we are currently working to take what we got from the federal government, put that into our initial proposal, and then move forward as we were going to before. So I don't believe that we'll really have the leeway to make that change to sort of divert more funds to anchor institutions. Like I said, they were pretty strict about their thoughts there in terms of, like I said, keeping everything the same other than incorporating these new things. So I think it's a good thing to think about, and perhaps we'll have funds left over at the end, and maybe we'll be able to have a little bit more leeway with the funds that we have now that we obviously don't need to budget that out for non-deployment. But like I said, in the short term, we will be keeping things the same in terms of prioritizing non-CAI locations at this time. David, if you have a question.
And just for clarity, so the recently published community anchors and critical infrastructure locations are actually not going to be considered. Is that what I'm hearing? Because we're sticking with the original only residents.
Yeah, we're sticking with our originally written initial proposal volume 2, which prioritizes, yes, sir, residences, businesses, farms, etc. And like I said, NTI has not given us leeway to amend initial proposal volume 2 in that way. So it'll be continuing the way that we had written that. Yes, sir.
Can they go ahead, but can the providers include the CI or CAI as they're going through asking for their deployment dollars?
Yes, they would be able. Yes, sir. They'd be able to do that, and I think we had kind of anticipated that they would handle that themselves as it was. I think part of the reason that we had not prioritized CAIs was because our understanding was that they would have to run infrastructure past CAIs in order to get to the residential locations, and then it wouldn't be much of a lift for them to then connect those institutions to the infrastructure that they're already constructing. So that was sort of our logic when we wrote the plan, and I think we're still anticipating that that'll happen. And to your point, that would be something that they could elect to do.
Okay, so if they were not done on those first passes, they can do in the deployment for BEAD, include them now.
Yes, they could.
Okay, because that's one of the things that we have seen is that was not done.
Right.
So we want to make sure that those get added to, if they can be, to the BEAD.
Got it.
Awesome. I just needed clarity. We met with our team on, I think it was Friday, and thank you, Elizabeth, for being there. Appreciate it. And that was one of those things. So really appreciate the clarification.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for your questions. Does anyone have anything else before we move over to the next agenda item? Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Regarding the mapping, is there going to be a new list published?
Yes, our GIS team is currently working on that, getting that updated. Given the new guidance we received, we will send that out as soon as we have it, but we're thinking just because of how much it's going to take to getting all that information together again, it'll be pretty close to that July 10th date.
Gotcha.
And we got some information from NTIA regarding some RDOF guidelines, or RDOF defaults. So we're working on incorporating all that as well. So like Elizabeth said, we'll be getting that to you shortly, and we're redrawing some of our project areas with that in mind.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Joe, you got another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one other thing. Again, reading June 6th, it's very prescriptive on timelines from NTIA. And I heard June 10th, July 10th for 30 days for applications, including pre-registration. But I think that the key date is September 4th, I believe, which is 90 days, where Florida would have to have its list of expected recommended awardees submitted formally to NTIA for their review. That's what I understand reading it and talking to other broadband offices. Is that something we should all be aware of?
Yes, sir. That's the timeline we're working on. September 4th, like you said, is when all states' final proposals will be due to NTIA. That's the timeline that we're working on. And yes, July 10th, 30 days. That is the way that we're going to handle it. Yes, sir.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. Kyle.
Yes, thank you. In light of Paul's comments, is there any thought about abbreviating the application just to expedite that review period?
It's something that we've seen a lot of other states do. We've heard that some states are going as short as a week for their window. Because we have so many project areas and because we hadn't done sub-grantee selection before, obviously, I think we understand that we are up against the clock a little bit here, but we also want to make sure that we're giving providers a fair chance, to put together a really high quality application and make sure that just because we're on this expedited timeline, that we're still getting a quality product from providers. So it's something I think that we're considering, but I think ultimately we'd like to make sure that we can give people that time to fill out that application and speak to their service areas and the infrastructure and the way that they want to handle it. So, like I said, just want to make sure that we are still turning out a quality product, even given the shorter timeline.
So I just am trying to think in terms of external communication from our local technology planning teams to our providers. We may get pinched in being able to share concisely messaging from your office. Will you please consider, as you are able, crafting some messages so that our LTPTs can be very consistent in how we're sharing information?
Yes,
Almost
sir.
like a guidance on communication.
Yes, I will write that down. We will get started on that after the call, and we will get something to you shortly.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Alrighty, so with that change, the grant portal, we delayed its opening. We're currently working on getting all those user accounts created, and we should be sending out information with credentials to everyone in the near future and further instructions. So any registered contacts, just keep an eye out for those emails. We're working on it. We'll get that to you as soon as we can. And that is everything we have on the agenda before we switch over to the LTPT section of the call. Does anyone have any questions before we move on to that section? Alrighty, well, I will ask everyone that is not an LTPT to go ahead and step off. Thank you so much for coming today, and we will see you next month. All right, it looks like mostly everybody stepped off. We'll go ahead and move over to our LTPT section. I know with obviously workforce being paused, that won't be coming your guys' way unless we hear anything different. But obviously we appreciate any support and help that you guys can give with those letter support for deployment applications. We still value your input and feedback. And if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. But yeah, does anyone have any questions or announcements that they would like to raise?
I do want to jump in. One of the elements of the policy notice is that providers have to be allowed to essentially, if we're going to draw our own project areas, a provider has to be allowed to say, we don't want to serve those areas, and then those areas would stand to be removed from the project areas, and then we would handle them in the sort of negotiation round that Elizabeth talked about after we closed the window. And I think I understand, we've heard from y'all that like, because we drew our own project areas for this, that the way that you had engaged with the project areas and locations in the past was to sort of get a sense of what the providers were doing and weigh in that way. And since we drew the project areas, that it would be a little bit tougher for you guys to engage in that way. And so I think that's something that you guys can get a sense of is when the providers come and speak to which project areas they're thinking about applying for. That's an opportunity, I think, for you guys to get some more information. Are there any locations that you are considering asking to be removed from the area? And if so, how can we move forward? How can those locations be served, et cetera, things like that. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. And if they are, if they haven't, like I said, spoken to that when they come to your teams with their proposals, like I said, just something to consider. Hey, Sean. So I will read you what it says in the non-deployment. It says, this is a quote from the policy notice. Funding for allowable non-deployment purposes is under review, and NTIA will issue updated guidance in the future. The other thing it says is that the policy or the final proposal that we're submitting in September should only be deployment and shouldn't be non-deployment. So we are truly pretty not sure how that's going to shake out. We are submitting with our initial proposal or the final proposal. We're still submitting a budget, and our budget will include workforce budgeted as we had it before. So we are at least still hopeful that there's a chance that could come through. But like I said, we are not sure, and we're going to have to see exactly what they mean by further guidance. So we, like I said, we are waiting and wishing. David, I see your hand up.
Oh, of course I did. Thank you, Jacob. So that I understand correctly and that I'm trying to set some expectations as well, my understanding from the update from NTIA was, and I'm going to use my specific example. I have the counties, different people have gotten to different providers, and Spectrum has been our big one down here. They did skip critical infrastructure and CA. And as part of that, we are asking them, as part of this final piece, is to make sure that they are, because deployment is still part of this, to make sure they have that those are now included. The pushback I got was twofold. One was it can be negotiated and they don't have to. The other is that we as LTPTs are no longer part of the official process. They do not have to engage us in their submissions. So where before that there was the guideline that you should have feedback and inclusion from the LTPT, that is no longer a requirement, nor is it necessary.
Thank you for the question. So we have a state statutory obligation to loop you guys into the process. So we might have to, discuss that with NTIA further. But if we completely boxed you out of, any type of participation at all, we'd be in violation of state law. So I don't think our intent is to alter things too greatly, and I know that we've seen a lot of success with that. We're still finalizing the application and specifically trying to understand exactly where that's going to go. So I'll get you some more information on that. Paul is working on that. He's not on the call at the moment. He's out of town, but I will get some more specific clarification on exactly how that's going to shake out in the application.
But if I just want to kind of for my own head, and I knew that was, and I knew you guys had our backs on that front. But I think from the NTIA standpoint, they're not going to require it like before they were. Is that correct?
Yes, and a big part of that has to do with the way that we report our local coordination to them. Essentially, we used to have to do this big long list where we talk about every engagement we did and like how many people were there and what covered populations they were in and all this other stuff. And so we now don't have to do that. But like I said, the legislature was very clear. Their intent was very clear. This is a thing that they want us to be doing. And like if we just completely wrote you out of the process, we would be in violation of state law. And we are certainly not trying to do that. And we've seen a really high level of engagement and success through this initiative. So I definitely think it would be like an obvious mistake to do that. So that's not our intent at all.
And
like
I
said,
knew it wouldn't be on the state side. So you guys have been great. That's
yes,
not it. But
thank
it
you.
was some of the comments that were made from the providers at our meeting on Friday. So
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yeah, like I said, and I'll get you some more specific clarification on that. But yeah, to your point, we are definitely not trying to make serious changes. We like what we've gotten from y'all. So thank you for that. Peter.
Yeah, Jacob, that was the same issue. I'm in adjacent county to David, and we heard similar. And with the short time frame, we're trying to get our arms around, who's playing and where they're going, and we're not getting any feedback.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so I think that this will probably be something we address with Kyle's comment. I think we'll work on that as well. Something to get to you, to get to the providers about their role and the LTPT's role in the application process to sort of clarify that a little bit.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Any other questions?
And just along with what Jacob was saying, that's something I'm sure we'll reemphasize when we do those webinars and as we communicate with the applicants is the still desire for local support and communicating with the LTPTs. I'm not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised. Does anybody have anything else I'd like to bring up before we end? Alrighty, well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Like Jacob said, we will get something to you shortly. Feel free to email me or Jacob in the meantime with any questions you have. You can direct people or come yourselves to our office hours that we have. They're linked just on the front page of our website. But thank you all. I hope you have a great week. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.